Welcome to Empowered. I'm your host, Jessica Flynn of thejessicaflynn.com, and our show is on a mission to unleash local wisdom for widespread impact. We're committed to inspiring positive change in our community and the entire region of South Georgian Bay. Today, we are joined by Justine D'as, Simcoe County's fearless, sassy siren. Justine D'as is a bold advocate, captivating drag performer, educator, and community champion. Since 2017, this queen has lip-synced her padded derriere off performing at tons of queer social events, lending a well-manicured hand to various charitable events, raising thousands of dollars for initiatives all over Simcoe County and our region. She's had the privilege of sharing the stage with several Roo girls while making history as one of the first drag queens to perform at a Canadian Armed Force base. Justine uses her platform to share vital queer history, empowering LGBTQ2S+ voices, and to foster acceptance through art, storytelling, and unapologetic presence. And she's just getting started. So please join me in welcoming Justine to the studio, which you are familiar with.
Yes, I am.
Yes.
Hello.
We're so grateful that you are here to have this really important conversation today.
Yes.
About the art, history, and cultural significance of the art of drag,
Yes.
and the risk that we're under right now of losing a lot of the progress that we've made as a community, and to protect the safety and right to humanity.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Not a small topic for a Tuesday morning.
No.
But let's start with learning more about Justine D'as and your persona and how you came into her and how you found each other.
So I started doing drag when I was 19.
Wow.
I'm 44 now. And when I first started, I was living in Toronto, and I saw all the performers and just the energy that they had and the kind of joy that they brought to the community, right? It was just something that really was like, I want to do this. And I was a performer in school, so I did music theater and all that fun stuff. I loved dancing, and I just loved to be the center of attention. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, who doesn't want to be in the spotlight?
All of us theater kids.
Right?
Yeah.
But as time went on, like I stopped for a while, and when I got back into it about 8 years ago, again, it was literally just for the performance aspect, because I miss being on stage, I miss performing, I miss being out in the community. But the more I got into doing drag, the more I got into it, and like I delve into the history, like why we were doing what we do, where we came from, the purpose of what drag is and what it represents for our community.
Yeah.
And that's what kind of lit the fire under my padded derriere to continue on doing what I'm doing. As much as I love being on stage and I love performing and doing shows and stuff like that, this is kind of where my platform is. Like I like to talk and do events where I'm talking to youth groups or talking to community groups, women's groups, everybody. Like I've talked to everybody, including dogs. I've done things for dogs.
Anyone who wants to learn.
Anybody
right?
who wants to
open.
learn, right?
Yeah.
And it's really amazing the responses that you get from some people too. Like people that you would have never thought that would be like, I'm not into this. And then all of a sudden I had a woman last year at an old age home, one of the senior homes in Barrie. And she came up to me after our little event, and she had said to me, she said, I wasn't going to come to this because I don't, agree with all of this.
Right.
But she's like, you actually taught me some stuff. And she's like, I'm very interested to learn more. And so thank you so much for opening my eyes to me and telling me that there was a history, because people just think it's this,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Or that it's just sexual.
Right. Oh,
Right.
that's the biggest thing, is the sexualization.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, like, there is a sexual aspect to what we do, but it's, again, curtailed. So, like, I'm not going to be at a story read for children in a thong whipping my hair around and, like, jumping off the bar.
And the fact that that's an assumption that's made
Right.
is just astounding.
It blows my mind. Like,
Yeah.
I've even said before, it's like, we don't, like, little kids don't wait for the bus on the corner and like come to the library by themselves. We don't go around picking kids up off the corner, right? Like parents bring them to these
they're
things.
Choosing
They're choosing
to open up their eyes.
Exactly, and that's the thing. That's where the education starts, right?
Yes.
It's like, and when it's, you know, people are like, oh, you're indoctrinating or you're pushing. No, it's like everything in life. You want to learn about Indigenous culture. We want to learn about our own personal cultures, where our family heritage came from. We do that. We learn about that. We want to learn about a different language. We want to learn music. We go and get educated on that. We learn how to do these things.
Yeah.
So if you don't know something about something, you learn. And if you know nothing about queer history and why we do what we do, why wouldn't you go learn about it?
Right, at the library.
At the library,
right?
of all places.
And I love too, there's such an importance to have education and opportunity for youth to learn, to know themselves, that they can be themselves,
Yes.
and that there is a community around them that celebrates that and will champion them
Absolutely.
indefinitely. But also thinking of that maybe grandmother in the retirement, like the children's influence is not just when they're young and who they see at the library. It's how we speak about each other and what's accepted as an entire collective community.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And unfortunately, generationally, it's kind of hard sometimes. But myself included, I was very, very fortunate to have grandparents that were very open and very loving, and still very, didn't know a lot about it, but still very accepting and very loving. But there are people who just don't understand, but there are people that will take the opportunity to understand, and that's why it's important for people like myself and other people who do what I do to go out and talk and to do these education platforms, because it's not okay. So when people say, "Oh, you're indoctrinating, you're trying to push this way, you're woke, this blah blah blah," no. What we're doing, because we did not have people like me when we were children. Yes, this is
where I think of as an educator and as a parent.
100%.
Right?
There were no beacons of light like us. We had nobody to look towards. We don't want your kids to be gay. Yeah. We don't want them to be trans.
We want them to be them.
We want them to be themselves, and just to know that there are people out there that are living their own true authentic selves, and it is okay, and it is okay for them. Whatever they want in life, it is okay for them to do that as long as they're safe and they're healthy.
Yeah. And we were talking before we started filming too about the burden of, you have your own life and a husband and a family, but to keep blazing this path that we're seeing is under attack every day, and more so in the last few months than in the last couple of decades of progress. And so as much as, I hope you feel celebrated and appreciated, also empathize with that's no small feat that you're being tasked with.
No, it's not, absolutely not. And like I am just a drop in a bucket of the people who have trailblazed before myself and the others who stand with me on this platform today. People literally had to crawl through mud and get beaten and arrested, and their names were sullied, thrown in jail, all these different things in order for their voices to be heard and just be recognized as human beings. And that's all anybody wants, is just to be recognized as a human. Yeah. We all breathe the same air, we all bleed the same blood, we all have the same feelings. We're somebody's brother, sister, mother, daughter, we're somebody's something. Yeah. And people need to remember that. And for people just to blatantly be so disrespectful and so hateful.
And it's really a choice to remain ignorant.
100%
right?
It is. 100% it is. And we're seeing, unfortunately, the face of the ignorance shine really brightly right now.
Yeah. So before we go to break in a few minutes, can you talk about, that history of the lived experience of your four sisters and how drag has helped get out of the mud in some ways?
Well, it's crazy because drag goes back as far back as the 1300s. So that's I think the most current time that they have right now.
I learned recently that a high heel was originally designed for a man.
For men,
right?
Yeah. And same with pink. Pink was originally a men's color, right? Men wore makeup. Men wore fancy wigs and hair. Men carried purses. That was men's fashion. Yeah. And then it switched, right? But the reason why drag in itself became the way it is now is because women were not allowed on the stage. And so it was men who had to play all the roles.
I remember this from high school, learning about Shakespeare.
Right?
Yeah.
So men, they do say the acronym for drag is dress regularly as woman. Dress regularly as girl, sorry.
Right.
It's So, but there's waivers here and there about that. But that's literally how like drag in itself became what it is. And then as time progressed, we started seeing a movement in like the late 1800s, early 1900s of like the ballrooms and like the underground, like in Harlem, and like all the old school, like a lot of the dance crazes came from a lot of the underground queer and drag trans movements, right?
Freedom.
Right?
You could
It's
be free.
all about being free.
Yeah.
And it was so crazy because back in those days, you know, especially during Prohibition in the speakeasies,
Yeah.
everybody hung out. It didn't matter what color you were, what your orientation was, everybody hung out in the bars together in secret and had drinks and performed. And that's where a lot of
fun.
drag performers started their cabaret.
Right.
Was in those underground speakeasies. And then slowly started becoming more like popular in the queer community. And then it was there was a lot of like balls. So when I say balls, it's like pageants. So the pageant scene, the ballroom scene was really big and really prevalent, and that was through the mid 1900s into the late 1900s. Right now, I think where we've really skyrocketed into where we are now for drag was like the late 70s, early 80s. So in the 60s, I'm just babbling on here, but
This is fascinating.
in 69.
And it's our shared history.
Right, 100%.
Yeah.
In 69 was when Stonewall happened, so that was literally like when the riot began, and that's when our first Pride happened, and that's when the drag queens and the trans women were just like, no, we're done, we're not doing this, and they stood arm in arm in protest against the police and overturned cars and set them on fire, and it was crazy.
Yeah.
The people on the street, like those shop owners and stuff, they would hide all the gay people in their stores and their shops and wouldn't let the police in.
Right.
Because these were their neighbors.
Yes.
These were the people that supported their businesses, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, it was, before that was the Compton lunchroom riots.
Okay.
Compton cafeteria riots. And that was when trans women were like, no, like we're tired of being treated like less than. And then we had Stonewall, and then you know, in the 70s we started having more of like the ballrooms, the pageants, where people were able to come and just kind of be more themselves and express themselves in ways they wanted to. So then we had categories for like face and body and like, you know, looking like a natural woman, or if you wanted
appreciating the time and
the
art
time and the art
dedication.
and everything, and
Yeah.
that's like there is so much history that comes with drag. I'm literally just hitting like points. And then one of the most prevalent documentaries that has ever been put out about modern drag is called Paris is Burning, and it came out in the 80s, and it showcases the ballroom scene in the 80s, and like just how powerful it was to be a queer person of color, a trans person, you know, and all the things and the houses and all the family dynamics and everything that got built within this area. So drag not only in itself was a necessity for our community, but it was a way to keep our community connected and together.
Justine, you're such a breadth of knowledge, and we're going to take a short break, continue this into the 1990s of our history lesson, and also there's so much work to be still done. And so come back to us on Empowered with Jessica Flynn and Justine D'as. Welcome back to Empowered. I'm your host, Jessica Flynn, and I'm having an incredibly enlightening and important conversation with Justine D'as. We just had wrapped up before the break a little bit of this very brief, intensive history lesson, but what was happening in the 90s and until now?
So the 90s is kind of where drag became a little bit more mainstream. So we had people like RuPaul, of course.
Right.
The Viva Glam, the AIDS campaign that Mac did for the longest time. She was the spokesperson in like 1994 or 93. And that's when I first saw her on the scene of anything.
Right.
You know, I was like 12, 13 years old. And so she, like, again, like all of the major icons in our community, they mostly got their, like a lot of them got their start in New York. And so that's where a lot of our iconic drag performers like Lip Synca, Sherry Vine, Jackie Beat, Coco Peru, like all of those women, Lady Bunny, like they've all started like in like the late 80s, early 90s, and they built the community and built up everything to kind of what it is.
And it really does
now.
relate back to that kind of speakeasy
Yes,
culture in these
right?
city centers.
Yeah, there was lots more prevalence of like drag culture in the open, like Wigstock. That was something that Lady Bunny produced. And it was like this huge thing where drag performers would come from all over the States and they would perform at this big outdoor festival. You'd have people like Lee Bowery, who was like a huge artistic icon in the queer community. Again, like RuPaul, Lady Bunny, all of those people that would just come out and do the most iconic, crazy things that really just kind of opened the world's eyes to what drag and drag culture is.
Yeah.
Now, again, like we were saying before, you know, people think that it's very sexualized and whatever, and it is to an extent because when we're in an adult environment, we're in the nightclubs.
Yes.
Because that's where we came from.
Yeah.
Right? It's more now.
Also, like any adult who goes to a nightclub is going to
Exactly.
do things that they don't do in a library when they're reading children's books.
That's just
right?
common sense,
Yes,
right?
yeah.
But the way that things have gone now, like we've become more mainstream, and you know, drag queens are out. We're doing lots of shows. We're doing charity events. We're doing all that, and we're doing story reads and all this
Yeah.
stuff. So we've kind of had to curtail ourselves,
Right.
in order to kind of fit a niche.
Right.
For them to make everybody else comfortable. Does that make sense?
yes.
And so we're doing that.
Right.
But then there's this other group of people that are telling us that we're still not doing it right and we're still making them uncomfortable.
Right.
And it's like, okay, cool.
Just constant
Yeah.
polarity.
It literally
right?
is. And then we move forward into the 2010s, or into the 2000s and 2010s, and we start seeing more competition shows and more things, and then RuPaul's Drag Race comes out, obviously, and now it is just skyrocketed. And now the only issue that I'm having now with Drag Race is that it is kind of gotten away from what drag is, and it's more about the glitz and the glamour and the
Okay.
costuming and whatever. And don't get me wrong, that's
Yeah.
all fantastic.
Yeah.
But there's the heart and the
Let's
passion.
talk about that, the heart, the passion, and the power that
Yeah.
comes with this persona.
Yeah, it literally, like, it takes a lot to do this, right? And
I've seen you've shared videos of, you know, to put just your face on, and the care, and we both have theater backgrounds as well, and talking about it's a different kind of makeup.
Yeah.
Like it is, you want to show up on stage and or in a parade, right? Where you've got, but it's a real dedication to a craft.
Yes.
So can you speak about the artistry in that?
So learning makeup is like just like the scratching point, like the
Yeah.
surface point. Learning how to put together an outfit, putting together a look is great. Most, you know, any person could get painted, put on a dress, put on
Yeah.
a whatever.
It's so much deeper than that.
It's so much deeper than that.
Yeah.
It really is. You need to be able to command a room. Like, you need to be able to have the gumption to stand up in front of an audience of strangers and literally act a fool. Like, you know, people like, you know, it's ingrained in us to be, you know, well behaved and be whatever and blah, blah, but then all of a sudden we put this on and it's like, I'm supposed to be silly. I'm
Yes.
supposed to act a fool.
Yeah. And to help you feel that in you, right?
And you want to give people a good time. We want
This
them to
is why
laugh.
I think, I know in Collingwood, you can't go to a good event where a drag queen is not the MC, because you do have this talent and this skill of making people feel celebrated in their own skin, whoever they are.
And Collingwood in itself is like, I would say, a safe haven hub for our queer community. Collingwood has made, Collingwood has made such an open, welcoming space for everybody, but especially for the queer community, and all the businesses that offer drag shows and all the things that they do for Collingwood Pride and all that. It's crazy amazing to see an entire community do that. I wish we had more of that in Barrie. But we're getting there.
Yeah. Well, and we have to not just rely on individuals. We need to bring support, bring funds, bring sponsorship to these things so that we don't risk losing what we're building.
Exactly. And it's not just specifically about having queer spaces, because everyone's like, oh, do you guys have like a gay bar or a drag bar or whatever? And like, no, we have inclusive spaces. But we just need more of them, because we shouldn't be segregating. You know what I mean? We shouldn't be segregating ourselves. We should be working together as a community. And, you know, it's just like, you know, sometimes you have like bagpipes at a bar, or one night you have like bingo night or whatever it is, like just a little bit of everything for everybody. And why can't drag culture be a part of that?
Right. It's really interesting. And again, before, we had a great conversation before the cameras turned on, but we were also talking about DEI and how we've just seemed to be making some serious progress, and here it is now being erased.
Yeah, well, it's, you know, it's the whole woke mind monster, right? The whole woke mind conspiracy that everyone keeps talking about. And like, for people who don't understand, like, woke is just being aware of other people and having empathy, compassion for other people and how they're treated in life. Because again, you know, we want to talk about you know, people want to throw religion and throw this, whatever. But one of the biggest things in there is the 10 Commandments. And one of the 10 Commandments is like, do unto others as you will have done unto you. So why would you treat somebody so horribly when that is one of your checkpoints of life, right? It doesn't matter. And it's not your place to judge, right? And so just let people be people and allow people the breath to discover who they are as themselves and live their true authentic lives. But there are way too many people that are putting, you know, a label, a DEI label, a this label, a that label on things. And now you're seeing, you know, corporations are pulling out sponsorship. They're like, large corporations aren't supporting Pride this year. So, you know, we're seeing lots of, you know, where you would have like the Pride rainbow over like a company's logo. It's not there anymore. You know, it's there were tons of corporate sponsors that pulled out of Toronto Pride this year.
It's so disappointing. It's not only disappointing, it's scary.
It is, but again, it's almost a little bit refreshing. And the reason why I say that is because we have forgotten what Pride is really about. Pride is a protest. Pride is a way for the queer community to stand together in solidarity and say, we are here, we exist, and we have the right to exist. We don't need corporations to throw money at us and, you know, we're happy for you 30 days out of the year.
Especially if obviously it's not, it wasn't authentic.
Exactly. So if you were, you know, you wanted to be on that bandwagon, you know what I mean? And, you know, we're not an accessory. You know, we're not just a niche, whatever. We are human beings trying to exist on this planet. And for you to just slough us off and to just, oh, well, you know what? They're this now. They're not important, so we're just going to take this away from them. It's like,
to use it as a platform to monetize. As opposed to
and that's
actually
all it was. It was like, oh, well, how am I going to benefit from this instead of helping other people benefit and be better?
I read through a study I was working on with Georgian College and the YMCA recently. 1 in 3 students in Simcoe County does not feel safe going to school right now, and it's what a devastating stat to learn. And we're in a fairly, you know, small, affluent area. We just need to keep showing it. And I know we've talked about the burden that your community is under right now as leaders to keep this momentum as there's risk of this flame going out for future generations. So in the last couple of minutes that we have, for those who are seeking to learn more, to gain an education, and we were saying too over the break, we get lots of juicy stuff in between the cameras, but like, where is this published? Where are the history books? How do we learn as a community? what you're teaching in this very short period of time?
So it's again, for myself, going on this journey, I've had to do a lot of self-discovery. I've had to learn a lot of things on my own, a lot of social media stuff that I have learned, and then myself just going in and doing it and talking to people that have experienced it, who have been there, who worked through it. You know, I've talked to people who have survived the AIDS crisis, who watched all of their friends and loved ones die around them. I've watched people talked to people who were there during Stonewall. I had the honor when I first came out, I sat with a 91-year-old queer man at a bar, and he told me about what life was like for him growing up and how he was married and had to hide his life. And you know what I mean? It's just, it's so hard for these people. So it's really important for people to understand and know this. So if you go to your local libraries, any places like the Gilbert Center, there are local people who go out and talk, especially in our community. So there's always community outreach through Barrie Pride, Fierté Simcoe Pride,
Rainbow
the Gilbert
Club
Center.
of South Georgian
Exactly.
Bay. Yeah.
All of those. Collingwood Pride, all of those, they always have talks and things going on, different what's the word I'm looking for? Different people, just speakers coming to talk to people about different things. But also too, it's really important if you want to learn yourself, just to sit down at the computer. You can Google search anything, right? And you can learn anything. But it does need to become a little bit more of an important topic. Like we were saying before, you know, we teach Indigenous history and culture. We teach, you know, our own cultures where we learn being gay, being queer, being trans. That's all.
It's not new.
It's not
it's
new.
All part of our history.
It's definitely not new.
Yeah.
Again, within the program that my husband and I do, it's Queer 101 Drag History, which we do at some libraries sometimes. We've spoken at women's events and different things like that. But we talk about trans and trans identity and how it's been around for thousands of years all over the world, not just this thing that just popped up out of nowhere. So if you want to take the time and educate yourself, there is tons of information out there.
And please do that. This is our call to bring your compassion, bring your curiosity, bring your love and support and humanity to your keyboard, to your library, and do that learning. And Justine, I cannot thank you enough for coming and sharing your story and enlightening us on a culture and history that's all of ours to share and embrace, and to set us up with some homework for the future. So thank you very much. We'll see you in our next episode of Empowered. I'm your host, Jessica Flynn.